It's what has been the most impactful thing. Been given me the most drop as far as depression, anxiety, all of those mental maladies are concerned. This has been the biggest movement for me has come from Advaita Zen Chan, One Mind, whatever you want to call it. I'm not trying to push it, but it's an offering. Try it on if it works for you. It's saved my life over and over again. Yeah, and it's made my life much smoother, a lot lighter ride. Okay, so in this talk, I just want to look at this one verse from the 5 verses on the self by Ramana Maharshi. Ramana Maharshi calls the self Buddha, or the beingness. He calls it the self. I refer to the self as the cognitive system, the sense of being an individual. That's because in AA, that's how we talk about it, the self. The self is like the individual, whereas he says the self is the infinite. And so just a little different wording, but you get it. So this is the third verse from the 5 verses on the self. The body is within the self, and yet one thinks one is inside the inert body, like some spectator who supposes that the screen on which the picture is thrown is within the picture. I'll run it again. The body is within the self. The body is within the self. So what he's saying is the self being the beingness, yeah, the infinite. The body is within that. It's a contents of the infinite. So within infinite spaciousness, there's this body, yeah, which is a part of the contents of the infinite, the self. And yet one thinks one is inside the inert body, like some spectator who supposes that the screen on which the picture is thrown is within the picture. One thinks one is inside the inert body. So he literally says one thinks one is inside the inert body. So what attaches us to the body is the thought process. Is that there's a thought process obviously happening. It's a voice that's talking to me as me, but it's not me. But if I'm taking myself to be that thought process, to be the mental system, the movement, the happening of the mental mind, yeah, little mind, not big mind, then it seems like I am inside the body because the thoughts are tying me to a body. So the thoughts almost have an object, really. Yeah. Yeah. And then in a certain way, then the body becomes the subject of outer object. But the main point of that is that the thoughts are tying me to the body. Yeah. Because if I'm living as the thoughts, they're going to suggest that I'm the thinker, the seer, the taster, the toucher, everything. Yeah. And what does that suggest? That I am the body. So one thinks one is inside the inert body, like some spectator who supposes that the screen on which the picture is thrown is within the picture. This is the kicker. You are the screen on which the movie plays, on which the action or the happening of life plays. So what he's saying is that when we're entangled with the thoughts and we're taking ourselves to be the thoughts and the body, we take ourselves to be the picture. The screen, the infinite, takes itself to be the finite, the picture, the action. That's the confusion. That's the misidentification. That I am the contents of the experience rather than what is aware. Yeah, that's the catch. I had this really great doctor early on in recovery who used to always say that the sky is always blue. And I used to repeat that when I got super depressed. Yeah, the sky is always blue. Even though I didn't believe that I was the screen or the open infinite sky, it really felt like I was the contents of that. The thinking mind, the hateful thoughts, the self-hate, the depression, the anxiety. It really felt like I was that. But that little mantra that he gave me, or that little phrase, the sky is always blue, or the sky is always clear, whatever you want to use. Yeah, he's pointing to the my screenness or the skyness of what we are. Yeah. You see, on the screen of life can be really anything. And here we're mostly talking right now about the mental process, because the mental process, as far as my experience in depression and suicidal thoughts and acting on those suicidal or harming thoughts, yeah, is taking myself to be the contents of the screen rather than the screen. You see, the thoughts can be about dinner, they can be about love and happiness, or they can be about suicide, depression, self hate, self harm. Neither side of that spectrum is me. You see? Both are the contents of the screen. Both are part of the movie, the happening of life. But it doesn't change my screenness. Now, the trick that the head has is it's talking to me as me. It's a program that's happening, that's talking to me as me. And I said this in the last video, if you have a lot of anxiety and depression, I highly doubt that you're initiating those thoughts. There's something clicking on those thoughts and they're kind of firing on their own, yeah? You're not doing that. You're not doing any of the thought firing. It's a program. And if you just look back through, let's say, yesterday, and you really kind of analyze what was happening in your mind versus what you were doing, they don't really match up. I was taking a shower and I was thinking about work that night, or I was thinking about work last week. So there's a happening, there's what you're in right now, and then there's a mental process happening, which is usually about past and future. Depression, in my experience, is the contents of past. It's mental programming based on past happening. It's not happening right now, but it's creating a mental anxiety, a mental movement right now. But it's fueled from the past, you see? And it's so important that we see that we're not doing it. The depression is not killing you. What is hurting you, what is hindering your life, is taking yourself to be the one who is thinking they are depressed. It's taking yourself as the initiator of those thoughts. The real root of it is that we take ourselves to be a self, to be a separate individual, a J, let's say, in this body, like Ramana says. That's really kind of the base of the whole thing. There is no self as far as non duality is concerned. There's a bunch of happening moving around. In my experience in the past, depression seemed like it was killing me because I was identified as the mental system which was running the depression reel. The radio station was playing the depression station, and I was taking myself to be that. Yeah. So it felt like depression was killing me, but it wasn't. What was killing me is the identification with the mental movement, and I'm not initiating that movement. Furthermore, I can see that movement happen, which means it's not me. Yeah? If you can see it happen, there's something that's aware of the happening. There's a screen on which the happening is playing. And if you're like me, your depression is so wild and so the spectrum is so high and low and high and low. There's no way that you could even possibly try to do that. There's something happening. Yes? Something has come into the mental system. We could call it like a parasite. Named depression has come into the mental system and it's affecting the mental system. And I'm taking myself to be that mental system. It's going to really take me on a run. Because here's the crux of it, the mental system doesn't really have any power until I give it power by identifying as it. So how do we see it? Yeah, it's like if you look, if you look into the mental process and you ask, who does a thought arise to? Come me. It rises to me. Then you look in your eyes, who am I? Or where is that me? And see if you can find that anywhere, inside or outside. Yeah. Is there a me like in your ankle? Where is it? Yeah. You'll see really quickly you can't find it because it's just a movement. It's a movement. It's a passing movement, like a river flowing. Yeah. It's just a movement happening. So what happens then is there's a depressive thought. Let's say, no, there's just a thought. There's just a thought. It's like a movement, like the wind blowing. Okay, but in this case, if I'm taking myself to be the thought, now I'm reinforcing the thought. And now there's going to be a story that comes off of that one thought. And this is exactly what used to happen when I had really bad depression. And that depression, the end of it was I need to get the hell out of this depression. And I would try to get out of it as self, as Jay. And as Jay can't get out of Jay. Self cannot get out of self. We know that from recovery. Yeah. So what happens? It gets so uncomfortable that I drink, and then I drink a lot, and that doesn't permanently work. And then I'm really uncomfortable. I'm getting more uncomfortable because the thoughts are getting played through because I think I am the thoughts. So there's a story happening, a big one, and it's unraveling, and it's getting more and more dark, and it's getting bigger and bigger to the point where the only way I can see my way out of it is to kill myself by destroying the body because the thoughts got me tied to the body too. It doesn't have to go that way. There is a solution. Yes. And it's seeing that you're not the mental movement, that there's no you, which the mental movement is rooted in. It's just happening. It's a program which is firing, based probably on past experience. A bunch of information has been put together that something might happen in your day-to-day life. This is what happened with me. Something would happen, it would start a thought. I think I am that thought, so now I go, yes, that thought's true. I am worthless, and I did ruin that relationship. Well, I've ruined every relationship that's ever happened, and I'm worthless, and I hate myself, and now I'm drunk, and then I'm drunk for a week, and then I'm drunk for a month, and now that story about me being a piece of shit is so heavy, the only way I can see myself out of it is to try to kill myself, to get out of the discomfort. You see, we've got to look at it. It's so important. And I'm going to keep talking about it, whether people listen to these videos or not. I'm going to keep talking about it because every time I see online or I talk to somebody and a friend has killed themselves, a family member has killed themselves, it doesn't have to go there. We need to right our relationship with what's happening mentally. It's the most important aspect of our lives because as soon as we know what we are and we know what the body and the mind are and we know the relationship, ultimately the relationship is oneness, but the my words are not going to come to that. That's something you feel. How do you feel it? You feel it by seeing what you're not. By seeing what you're not. The crux of the thing with this like hardcore depression is that when you're deep in it, it's really hard to inquire who does it arise to. So if you're deep into depression, use some other means. Go for a walk, go to service, go talk to a therapist, do something else. Yeah, to settle the system before you start to look into, well, who does the depression arise to and whose thoughts are these? Am I doing these thoughts? Am I initiating them? Is this really my process? And is there a me who they arise to? Is there a me who arise to? Because if the head is immersed in depression, or if it's immersed in anxiety and it's immersed in identification, yeah, just inquiring into who is just going to make it that it's going to heighten the system. It's going to like blow air on the fire of the mental fire. Yeah. So do something else first. to settle the whole thing down. And keep in your head that the sky is always blue, that you are the screen on which the picture plays. You're not the picture. You're not the movie. It's so important to see. It will save your life. It will save your life, and it will give you back your days. It will give you back your days. That's it. As soon as we get entangled with the mental system too much, it's going to take us on a run. Because as I mentioned, it's a program that's happening. It's something that's based on past. Yeah, and it's worrying about the future. It's worrying about the future. So if there's depression, there's alcoholism, there's anxiety, yeah, it's usually fueled from the past. I want out of it now, and I see no future. Now, all of that is happening mentally, and it's all false evidence. It's all false evidence based on things that aren't happening right now. They seemingly are happening in the head, but it's a picture, it's a movie. As they would say in like the older Hindu texts, it's an illusion. So there's all of this happening, this mental happening arising all the time. And why is it arising all the time? Because it has to keep repeating itself in order to say that I am a thing, the head's a thing, J is a thing. Because when I look for it, it's not a thing. So it has to keep repeating itself all the time with thoughts, reifying that no, you're the thing, you're the thing. There is a J. J is thinking these thoughts. These are J's thoughts. This is J's body. You see? Because when you do inquire into it, there's nothing there. Yeah, what you are is way before all of that. Those thoughts, those thought processes bring what we are. Yeah, if I'm taking myself to be the thoughts, and those thoughts are depressive, if I'm just taking myself to be the thought process, to be a self, a small s self, let's say, yet my experience of life is already pretty claustrophobic because it's based on that mental system, which is quite refined. Really, it's pretty fragmented down. So if I take that normal experience and I add depression to it, now my experience is super claustrophobic. Yeah, self-centeredness is orbiting around here. Everything that the head comes into contact with is going to go boop boop, and it's coming right back to self-centeredness. How is that affecting me? How is that affecting me? This is my fault. I'm doing it all wrong. Me, 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 me. You see? It's self-centered. That's the mental system, is a very self-centered thing, and it gets claustrophobic and it brings you in. So when you see you're not the mental system, boy, yeah, the aperture opens up. And the more you see that, the more it opens up. Then those thought processes that bring on that heavy depression, yeah, they stop losing their power, because when you're not listening to them, you're not giving them power. Because they're inherently powerless until I listen to them. Until I go, oh yeah, that's me, and then I've given them now all their power. See? So then the thought process is having me. And if the thought process is based on I hate myself and I'm a piece of shit, it's gonna really have me. Yeah, because that's like super self-centeredness. The thought process is self-centered. It's just that's the program. It's a self-centered program. We're not going to change that. But what you can change is you can change to see you're not it. Because you're not it. You're not it. You are the screen on which the movie plays. You are the sky through which the clouds move. Now, whether you believe it and accept it or not, that is the fact of what we are and what's happening here. As soon as you look at it, it's not a far reach. It's really not. To see that the mental system is running its own script. And you're not initiating, you're not firing, you're not the doer of that mental system. So if the thoughts are depressive, you're not the doer of those depressive thoughts. You're not. You come before those depressive thoughts. And as soon as you see it, man, the game changes. The game changes real quick. In AA, we talk about powerlessness a lot. Yeah. Now, the powerlessness is in that small self. It's in the mental process. And when you see you're not that mental process, when you see you're not the self, there's a bunch of power that you are that comes before it as beingness, as awareness, as big S self, or the I am, as Ramana would say. The powerlessness is in the mental system because there is no power. It doesn't have power until I give it power by taking myself to be it and living as it. And as we mentioned before, self isn't going to get out of self. Self can't get out of self. So if I'm living as the head and I want to get out of the head, I'm not going to be able to get out of the head as the head. The way out is to see that I'm not in and never have been in. It's like pulling the rug right out from under the mental system. In my experience, it's like pulling the rug right out from underneath depression. Because depression is feeding, completely living on the idea that I am the thinker of the thoughts, that I am the doer, yeah, of the thought process. It's put all its chips into that corner because it relies on the mental process, yeah, to run its script. You're a piece of shit, you're worthless, you're never going to be enough, you can't survive alone. You should just get rid of yourself and save everybody a bunch of harm. All you do is hurt other people. This is the script, you see. It plays. Yeah. So if I'm taking myself to be the writer of that script, you can see where that's going to head. I'm going to want to end it somehow. So I'm going to drink, I'm going to drug, sex, whatever. And then for me, eventually it's going to lead to suicide. If I think I'm the script writer. But you're not. Never have been. You've never been in that. So what the script is relying on is that basis, that rug of that you, Jay, are the script writer, or that you are the script writer of the script running in your head. And as soon as you see that you're not the script writer, that there's mental process happening and you're not initiating it, and then you go, well, who is that arising to then? And you can't find it, that one who is arising to, because that is an idea. The rug gets pulled right out from under that script. And now we're standing on some solid ground, which is beingness, rather than stuck to this super claustrophobic, self-centered in the head individuality. And then there's a space to breathe. Now, what happens to the mental process after that? In my experience, it dissipates a lot because I'm not feeding it. But is it going to inherently change and go away? I have no idea. Like, find out for yourself. First, see that you're not it. Because if nothing else, seeing that you're not the mental process, the next time it goes towards suicide, you're going to have that ground to stand on. That's what saved my life. Even if I felt like I was the mental process, There was a deeper knowing that I'm not. The sky is always blue. I just repeat that shit to myself or something like that. The sky is always blue. The sky is always blue. I am the screen. I am the sky. Yeah. I am the ocean rather than the waves. So if nothing else, it'll pull you. It'll be the lifeline when you're diving. And I can talk about it because I know that dive. Yeah, but if I think I'm the mental process and I don't have that lifeline, that dive is quick and it's dark as shit. And I never know if I'm getting out of the dive. I don't know if I'm coming back up because it gets too dark. So the lifeline is the knowing that I'm not it. The knowing that I'm not it. That saved me from relapse. That saved me from killing myself. So at least it'll give you that lifeline. It'll give you that lifeline and it'll give you the understanding that you're not the mental system. So now we can really look at it. Then if it's not resolving, if it's repeating, you go to therapy or you go do some whatever works for you, yeah, to take care of the character. But you're still not the character, but you have to maintain the character, you see? It's seeing that you're not it will save a lot of shit and it'll pull the power out of it. But the repetition of that depressive pattern, in my experience, was really habituated. So it took a while to get into that, like to get it dissipated enough. And I did go to therapy for a bit. Yeah. The therapy for me was earlier on, and then I came into the non-duality more so. But those two together worked. Some people might not need therapy. And therapy is for the character. It's for the mental state. It's for your mental states and your patterning. It's not for you as what you are. And oftentimes when people realize what they are and that they're not the mental system, yeah, therapy, they don't need it. They don't need it because the rug has been pulled out from underneath it. But I'm not saying that you're going to be one way or another. I have no idea. I just know my own experience. And I'm just telling you what worked for me. And I like humbly believe that it works for everybody because you and me are the same thing as beingness, as Buddha, God, whatever you want to call it. We are the same one thing. And this has worked really good for me in with alcoholism and with depression, which are hand in hand, same thing. Both are based on the identity as a thing, which is the illusion. Both are based on that. That's why I love this non-duality because it really looks at the root. It's going straight to the root of the thing, the issue. Yeah. Self-reliance has failed us, as they say in recovery. Self, small s self, reliance has failed us. Small s self. The mental system is not cutting it. Yeah. So rather than trying to change the mental system as the mental system, which is not going to work, because if I'm identified as it, how am I going to shift it? It's going to be very, very difficult to do that. It's in the words of recovery, it's going to be impossible. But if I see that I'm not it, now I can shift it. Yeah. I stop living as the problem. I stop living as the problem. I start living from the solution to the problem. Now, from the solution, I can look at the problem. But as the problem, I'm not going to see the problem, nor am I going to be able to get out of the problem because I'm the problem. Yeah. So I see that I'm not the problem, the self, the small s self. I stop relying on that small s self because self reliance has failed us. Yeah. I see that I'm not it. And then there I am as what I've always been. I've never been in small s self. It's just a seeming that way.